Women Innovators. Interviews with women with big messages and big missions, sharing their stories to inspire you to live your passion and step up to make the world a better place. Here's your host, Tammy Patzer.
Hi, everyone. This is Tammy Patzer, and I'm excited because today's show is a little bit different. We are actually recording this edition of Women Innovators for a book called Raising the Bar. And I'm going to save the introduction of our guest, Regena, listen to this, Ozeryansky. I said but there's something about her name that we're actually going to discuss during the interview. But before we get started, let me just tell you what the Women Innovator Show is all about today. It is going to be all about how to help conscious men and women to understand their inner peace. And in these trying times, I think this is probably one of the most important interviews that I probably have conducted in recent times. So let me tell you a little bit more about Regena, and then we'll get back to the name. So listen up for that. But meanwhile, this is all about Regena. Prior to establishing her coaching business, Regena was and still is a real estate investor. She is an active realtor, certified yoga instructor, and soul language practitioner. The intrigue builds. She was Rookie Realtor of the Year, and she takes pride in her work and in supporting others to achieve their goals and dreams with more peace and ease. She works with individuals and families to help create transformation through wealth, especially with real estate education and asset allocation. She helps people with health with yoga and meditation and spiritual awareness by aligning them to their life's mission and purpose. Marrying her commitment to the public through real estate and her love for supporting people live more authentically, Regena offers a range of programs and services, including group yoga classes, private yoga instruction, transformation coaching, and energy healing through Reiki, and more. She works nationally and spreads her message across the country in workshops and retreats. She has served on many committees, including professional boards and educational platforms. She's worked in multi-level marketing industry since her 20s. She's a lover of self-development and companies that promote health, wealth, and or spiritual development as a complement to their business model and strategies. Regena specializes in helping her students and clients get unstuck and to move through fear, which is vital in today's world. She supports them to live more purposefully and, of course, passionately. Whether it's on the mat, in our private session, in classrooms, or out in the field showing property, Regena is committed to helping conscious men and women and families achieve big results. Now, this is really important, everyone listening in on this conversation. We're living in these times of, I guess, chaos is a good way to put it. Wouldn't you say so, Regena, that it's a time where everybody is kind of like going, what's going on? My world is upheavaled is a good word. Discombobulated.
Yeah, it sure is. And I hope it's okay to say this, WTF, right? Like, what the, what the freak is happening? Like, it's really, it's like somebody lifted the table and just flipped it upside down. And the great thing about that is that nobody is left, as I see it, nobody is left behind. We're all in this together. And I think there's something really magical about that. And also there's a responsibility.
Right. And if you look at, all of this, 2020, everybody was looking at 2020 as this time of clear vision. And 2019 did seem to be a foundational year for many people. But then if you think about 2020, there's also 2020 hindsight, 2020 clear vision, 2020 hindsight. So for many people, again, with the world in this upheaval more than ever, people like you, I think, are really, really important. So I want to go back to your name. So Regena Ozeryansky, and I had to practice that. But you told me, hey, I actually have another name, and I'd really love to find out what that name is and why.
Yeah, so the name that I was raised with, that I was born into, was Regena Rosa-Ozeryansky. And for probably the first couple years of my life, up till maybe 8 or 9, I didn't really like the name Regena. I thought it didn't fit. And I remember asking my mom one day, why did you name me that? And she said, I named you after my mom, who I never got to meet, my grandmother. And so it wasn't until about 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, I was in a meditation and I got the name Celeste. And I was just kind of contemplative after I heard the word, and I saw it like in letters, like big letters, and I saw like clouds behind it and some green, like almost like nature, like leaves. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know what I'm going to do with that name, but I'll know when it's time to use it. And I knew it was part of my name, but I didn't feel it yet. And so a couple times it showed up over the course of a few years. And then last year it showed up again, really, really bright. And it showed up a couple different ways. And I got really clear it was the time. And so I started using the name Regena Rosa-Celeste. And now, I love my name. I love what it stands for. I love what it means. And I think for many people, I've noticed in this time in history, a lot of things are being revealed and a lot of things are being shed. And I think of the snake, right, that sheds its skin. And we don't think of a snake shedding its skin or a reptile shedding its skin as a bad thing or a negative thing. We think of it as part of nature. And if we can be more like nature, then we can actually have more inner peace. And we can be in the flow with life and seasons and situations, right? Because this is a season that we're going through. And I think as a society and as a collective consciousness, global society, we really owe it to each other and to ourselves to embrace those changes and those seasons with grace and love as much as possible. And I know it's not easy, when people are doing silly things and, it's tough to go in the grocery store and not see food on the shelf or toiletries. It's not something we're used to. And it doesn't mean that we have to lose our peace and our sanity because of it. There's ways that we could stick together and we could actually thrive through it. So that's really what I'm passionate about these days, is helping people to see that inner peace is possible.
Well, I think that inner peace, and you call yourself the inner peace. What is what you were telling me, how you see yourself, the inner peace? What is I'm missing the third word. Yeah.
So I've been called the inner peace, revolutionist.
Oh, okay.
Inner peace revolutionist. Yeah. And part of the reason is because, one of my coaches I was talking to about it, and I really do feel it's a movement. I feel inner peace is a movement and it's a choice. And it's something that when we get into the space of gratitude and, high vibration and high frequency, we can really live more like that. But it does take a willingness and it takes intention. And so it's a practice. It's just like yoga or meditation or, running, right? Running's a practice. Runners and people that do exercise. Like I spoke to a bodybuilder today. And, he was telling me that he, has a regimen and he does certain things when he's in the bodybuilding mode. And so anything that we do with intention becomes, I think, a practice or a movement. And so the inner peace movement, for me, it's a revolution. It's bringing back the idea, because really a revolution is what? It's, in my mind, it's almost like when the rubber meets the road, right? Like, what's the difference between like a movement and a revolution? Like, a revolution is like, that's it. There's no more option. We got to go. We got to do this. And I feel we're at that stage. I feel that the world and humanity needs to get a grip and, frankly, get their heads on straight, all of us. And we need to do what we came here to do. We need to be light workers. We need to be, as I call, missionaries of consciousness. And I know you are, because that's why we connect so well. And I really feel that we're here to make a difference for the world and for one another. And we need to do the work, which means all the stuff that didn't work and all the, unfortunately, the dirt underneath the rug is now coming up. And it's pretty awful to look at. And it's pretty, sometimes it's really hard for people to digest that possibility that there is that much greed in the world, and there is that much darkness, and there is that much light. And
the good news is that the light, I think about all the things happening in the world, and there's all this panic and everything, but the people, like you said, the light workers, or the people who have been maybe in the last 10 or 20 years, they've been there in the background working on different things. Now they're rising up to be leaders. For example, you're rising up, raising your hand and say, okay, here I am. I know you're in pain, but I have some answers because I've lived through some of the darkest days. And so I've been prepared to be a leader in this. And I wanted to ask you, before we get into this, because what we're going to really focus on today, everyone, is Regena has, she's going to bust some myths that you may have about the world, that you certainly probably have about yourself. And I wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit, Regena, if you could share some of your story about how you got to the point where you are now, where you are that inner peace revolutionist, and how you got prepared to lead this movement that you are actually in the forefront of. So can you tell me a bit about your background and maybe some of those epiphanies or those awakenings that you had that brought you to this time?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so cool. I'm a very visual person, and some of the work I do is with, I know we've talked a little bit about the soul languages, and I get a lot of visions. And so the vision I just got was a group of like missionaries, right? Missionaries of consciousness holding hearts. And so we come armed with hearts, with love. And I'll be really transparent. Like, my journey to where I'm at now was not pretty, and was quite destructive and very painful. And I had to literally go to the depths of darkness in myself. And as I call it, dark night of the soul, not just once, but twice. And I got to a point where I didn't want to be here anymore. And this was not so long ago. It was just last year, 2019. And I was in a really, really dark place. I had a lot of self-judgment, self-criticism, the first time it happened. And then the second time it happened, which was last year. The first time was 5 years prior to that. So it was like 2013, 2014. And then when it showed up again last year, I asked myself, what is it that I need to learn for this not to happen again? Because I was in so much pain, and I didn't know why. I mean, I had, a loving family. Yes, my parents were ill, but it wasn't anything that anybody else goes through differently, right? Everybody's parents age. and I had, under most circumstances, most people's standards, I had a pretty good life, right? I had money in the bank. I had lots of friends. I had community. I had, relationships. I had all the things normal people have. And yet there was a part of me that was so unhappy and so hurting for the world. And I felt like I don't have the skills to be the person I'm supposed to be to help others. And that saying, be careful what you wish for, because you always get it, for which I'm so humbled and grateful for. I actually got what I needed, which was the tools and the confidence and the worthiness to be able to do what I do now, which is support people, because I got to go through that fear. I got to go through that place in myself where I didn't feel that I belonged. And I still don't. Sometimes I look around and I'm like, what is this circus? Like, this is what we call life, and it's great because now I make jokes about it. And now I'm meeting other people every day that get the struggles of life. And, life's not perfect. Life's not easy. However, we can create the joy and the magic and the passion that we say we want. It's not out there. It's never out there. It's not a person. It's not a job. It's not more money in the bank, because if it was, we would all be equal, right? There's people who have more money, but they're miserable. There's people who have less money, but they're happy, and vice versa, right? Like today, just an hour ago, I was in another podcast and it was all about money, and it was all about the money conversation and how, money is not tied to happiness. And this idea that when I have more money, or when I have that relationship, or when I lose 10 pounds, or when I get that job, like, no, it's not one day. And I think that's one of the unfortunate biggest traps that we put ourselves in as humans, when we convince ourselves that it's out there, because it's never out there. And I really believe everything that's going on right now with what we're experiencing in our world is really an opportunity to lift the veil of all the things in our lives that aren't working, and all the things in our lives that are, I like to say, the shadow side, right? And so with the shadow side comes light.
So what you just said, that you talked a lot about, it's not out there. And often, like you said, people think, if I have more money, if I have a partner in my life, if I have a bigger, better car, bigger, better house, and everything that you just said, it's all about outside ourselves. So what do you say about that? Because it's one of the myths that we have, that our happiness and joy and our peace is outside of ourselves. And am I right to understand what you're saying is that the truth is that the peace is not outside of ourselves? Can you bust the myth that our happiness is dependent upon outside factors? What is the myth behind that?
Absolutely. And that's such an incredible question. And I think that, I know, is the question of almost maybe our lifetime, right? Is how do we define happiness and how do we access it? Because everybody wants it. And when you ask people what do they want, they'll tell you they want a thing, right? They'll tell you they want a better job, or they'll tell you I want that relationship, or I want this or that. But what they really want is what they think that thing is going to bring them. And, I'll leave names obviously out of it because it's irrelevant. But I know myself, when I was in that space where I was searching for that next thing, which was around the time I had the original meditation, when the name came to me. This was about 8 or 9 years ago. I was in a relationship, and I was actually in a great relationship, but I wasn't happy. And I had a job, but I wasn't happy. And I had a business, but I wasn't happy. And I just kept, like, every time I would look and I would, have all these things. And I just noticed it was me. I was the common denominator. And I was just started doing yoga then. And so not just started, but I started really getting into yoga then and started thinking about teaching and all this stuff. And I remember one day I got to be on my mat a few years later. And it was in that class on my yoga mat, which was like my safe place. And I got the message very clearly. And it was like a conversation I'm having with you. It's very tangible, right? Like we're having this conversation, we see each other. And it was like I had a voice come through, and it was so clear and so loud to me. And it was basically telling me that it was inside of me. The peace, the happiness was inside of me. And I remember looking around and being like, who was that? And all the classmates were all in the pose, and the lights were dark. And I was like, okay, this is super weird. And I thought it was kind of spooky, and then it happened again. And I was just like, okay, this is weird. And I wasn't quite ready to embrace my gifts yet. And so what I came to find out was I went on this journey, and I started to really go deep into the wounds of my past and my, at that time, present. And sometimes they still show up, right? But I have access now. I have tools to give me access to internal peace whenever I want it. Versus then, I thought it had to come from outside. And that's the difference, is that it's really, that's the myth, right? The myth is that it's going to come from another source, or it's going to come from the next thing, because the next thing is there's always going to be a next thing. And not too long ago, I was in a relationship where, it was a wonderful relationship. It was a beautiful relationship. And it happens all the time, whether it's a friend or a partner. I see it a lot where I see people, I witness them in their own self-sabotage, where they think that the next thing is going to bring them that golden nugget of happiness. And it's not. And so it's an internal job. It's our own work. And, ask me how we get it. I mean, that varies, right? It could be dancing. It could be being outside. It could be reading. It could be writing. It could be spending time with friends, right? But I think at the end of the day, until we clear our traumas and we clear our past, which is another myth, which we'll get to, but until someone chooses to be happy, they're never going to be happy.
So,
like really happy.
So then decide that you're done with the search, right? And you mentioned, and I have to raise my hand because I'm guilty of somebody, I still do it even though I'm aware about living in the past, looking at the past, the if onlys. For example, I could say, oh, well, my mother was sick when I was little, so therefore I decided whatever I decided in my life, and that damaged me. I could blame my mom. I could 100%. Blame my dad. I could blame the fact that I got married and divorced by the time I was 21 and had a child. If I wanted to, I could say, I could blame my ex-husband. I could blame the fact I was a single mom. But the truth is, I look at all that stuff and I go, well, that it made me who I am today. But that is one of the those are all just excuses. How does that fit into what you're talking about? You talked about, okay, you have to decide. What about all of these excuses? Like right now is a really good time for us to really beat ourselves up. Like, oh, I should have seen it coming and saved more money. Oh, I should have gotten prepared and gotten a side hustle sooner because now I got laid off from my job, and I didn't expect that, because so many of us expect that if we have a job, I call them JOBs, that we're safe and that we don't have to worry about things because we have a job. We're responsible. You know, we get up and go to work every day. We do what it takes. And I was that person. Not only did I have one job, I had 3 jobs. I mean, I was go, 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 go. I went back to college and got a degree so that I could never be unemployable. And then, of course, I became unemployable because I don't want to work for anybody else. But what is that excuse factory? What is that all about? And how does it keep us from achieving what you say, that inner peace?
Yeah, well, excuses I feel are the biggest culprit, right? It's the biggest form of self-sabotage. Like, we'll use like something simple, right? Like weight loss. Like, and it's amazing what you said about, I should have saved more money, right? Like right here, like that was my first, I said that today, like 10 times in my head, like, oh, I should have saved more money. Should have saved more money. Truth is I didn't. And if I had saved more money, I would have still said I should have saved more money. Like it's a trap. It's a mental trap. And we always, it's like the hamster, right? And so the hamster doesn't go anywhere. The hamster just stays in the wheel, and that's what the head is doing. And to talk about the excuses, the thing about excuses is that they're just, it's just a mechanism. It's a mental, it's a strategy that the mind uses to trick us out of our own desires. And one of my teachers who I really respect, he is a businessman before a teacher, or at least let me put it the other way. He's a teacher and then he's a businessman. But what I love about him, I have several different teachers, but he is a meditation teacher, and he does speeches and, lectures around the world. And in one of his speeches, and he always wears a business suit. It's really cool because he sits at the stage with a glass of water, a little table glass of water, and I think a rose and the picture of his guru. And that's it. He doesn't use notes. He doesn't use a journal, nothing like that. He just talks. And what he shared multiple times, which is what I always remember him for, he shared that the mind is like the child, and the heart is like, the child is like the heart, and the mind is like the parent. And the child just wants to be free and wants to play and live life and has all these amazing, adventures, right? That the heart wants to go and live. But the mind is doing what the parent normally does, which is protecting. Don't cross the road. Don't touch light sockets. Don't talk to strangers, right? Tie your shoes. No, you can't go to the park. And no, you can't have a sleepover, right? Not because the parent wants to be mean, but just because the parent is trying to protect the child. And so when someone's mind is going into a loop, into old programming or the past, or into the future and worried, I don't have enough money. What am I going to do? What if I lose my job? What if, the world comes to an end? Well, guess what? If the world comes to an end, we're all done. It's okay. Like, and I don't mean to make light of it, but it's almost like we're worried about something that hasn't happened. And we're worried about something that has happened, which we can't change. So the only thing we can control is our reaction to the present. And so this idea of excuses is really the mind is doing what it's designed to do, which is to protect us. So I have a saying, which is follow your heart and take your head with you. And it's basically, lead with the heart and have joy and do all the things that you want to do because that's your life's purpose. That's what I feel we're designed to do. That's what I think God brought us here in the universe, brings us here, is to fulfill on our desires. And it doesn't mean if you want to do something wild, like jumping out of a plane, that you should just fly because we're not birds. You know what I mean? Like use armor and fly tandem, fly with someone, So I think it's really important to be smart and diligent in our decisions, but knowing that the brain is just doing what it's designed to do and not beat ourselves up when we when we're critiquing, like even when we have these excuses, which is why I love coaches, because it's a human experience, right? First and foremost, we're humans and we're designed to experience life. And so we're going to make mistakes. It's not if we make mistakes, we're going to. So the better that we're prepared to make those mistakes and have a safe place to fall or lean when it happens, the safer we're going to be. And so having a coach, having community, having friends, like right now, we all need community. We need each other. So it's really important that when these excuses come up, that we have someone to help say to us, hey, that's an excuse. Hey, I'm going to hold you accountable because you said, for example, like I could have had 10 excuses today for why I couldn't come on the show, because I had like the craziest morning. Like I had all my appointments in the morning were late. Then one of them was canceled. And then I was on my way to the doctor's office and I made a shake and I was super proud of myself because I made it really quick and I got dressed. I get in the car and I took off the lid and it exploded all over my car. So the car looked like a 2-year-old had spit all over the car and I didn't have time to clean it up. And I just started cracking up laughing because I was like, this is life right now. I can't control what I can't control, but I don't have to get pissed about it. I don't have to get upset. And granted, my first thought was, this is really inconvenient. And I almost got mad. And then I thought, what is that going to do for me? Like, yeah, I could get mad, but it's not going to make it any easier. And then I went to the bank and the guy at the bank got all pissy because the lady cut him off and, he starts screaming at her. Well, I'm sorry. In my mind, that's not going to make her that much more willing to get out of his way now that he's screaming at her. You know what I mean? It's like, we just need to, I think, really focus when we see these, and we don't always see these excuses as they show up. So that's why it's really important to have other people to call us out on our stuff. And that's why I think that is a myth, right? About, when people say they want something, how bad do you really want it? Because if you say you want something and then it shows up and you keep resisting and you keep pushing it back, it's really important to ask yourself, what is it that I'm allowing to block me? Because usually they're excuses, which is someday I'll.
And a good example is right before we started recording this call, all of a sudden my internet quit working and that happened at 4:44. So, I'm like, oh no. And I could have said, let's cancel this for another time, right? Because that could have been my excuse. I could have looked at it and said, oh, the universe doesn't want us to do this call. But instead, it literally was a matter of the fact that I had the cord wrapped around my chair and I pulled the plug and it just happened that it happened at that moment. But I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes we allow these little things to, oh, the universe doesn't want me to do this, even though it had nothing to do with anything other than your reaction and how you looked at it, just like your green shake situation. Things happen and it isn't necessarily a message that you shouldn't move forward. In fact, a lot of times I think when things happen, it's a message for us to slow down and to be aware of what we're doing and how to move it forward. A couple weeks ago, I was really struggling. For me, I laugh because everybody online now, this was before we were told, hey, stay home, don't go out in groups. And so I'm at home and I'm, having my normal one-on-one conversation with myself about what I do. And I'm a natural introvert. So it's hard for me sometimes to go out and meet people. So I have to talk myself into going out into the world and talking to people and, interacting face to face, because it's a lot easier for me to do what we're doing, for me to stay home and interact online. And so online now, I see all these people talking about, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm trapped at home. And I'm like, this is just normal. You do your work, you allocate your hours and everything. But a couple weeks ago, I was really struggling, and I kept getting this, who am I to be offering this information about authority and about mass media? And I'm like, where is this coming from? This concept of I am not good enough. And I actually was telling someone about, they said, well, tell me a story, for example. And I said, well, when I was little, about 4 years old, I used to sing at church, and I would sing at the top of my lungs. And I was just so happy because I was always, Jesus loves me, this I know. So I was really into the fact that Jesus loved me. And the part about Jesus takes care of the little children, I believed all of that. And this woman told me to shut up. And after that, I was terrified to sing, let alone to be seen and heard. I used to hide behind my dad's knee, and I did not sing in public, like aloud, until maybe 2 years ago. That's a long time to feel that you're good enough. And now, of course, I do podcasts, I have books, I'm on TV. So what is this thing that we think we're not enough? And I know that's one of the myths that you really like to dispel about that I'm not good enough. And I see it all the time. I mean, I meet these people that are like, oh my God, they're like brilliant, they're beautiful, they're educated in life and, through school, but they're just these phenomenally cool people, and yet they're hiding and not getting out there. Or like you said, they're doing their self-sabotage with their excuses, and they're not making that decision to get out there. So I know you work with people on this very issue. What is that all about, this I am not enough issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because I think it's a phenomenon, right? It's like we don't realize that that's the current that's controlling many people. And I think there's really only three, maybe four. But the first one is I'm not good enough. I don't deserve. And the other one is I'm not lovable, right? So everybody, I believe, wants to be loved, and everyone wants to love. That's what we're designed to do. That's why our hearts are the way they are. And you're laughing because it.
Let me tell you why I'm laughing, because you said there's three or four, and you said I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, and what was the other one?
I don't deserve.
And I don't deserve. Those are all things that I've fought with myself over the years. And and not feeling loved started way early, when I was little. Because I remember saying to my parents when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, I would go, nobody loves me, nobody cares. And my parents were like, what are you talking about? Because I was the baby. I was the, think about it. I was what my brothers and sisters would have considered the spoiled brat one, because I was very much loved and everything, but yet I didn't feel loved. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with what you said about deserving things. Sometimes we work really, really hard. I used to get straight A's in school, and I used to tell myself, oh, it's because you have a good memory. That's why you get good grades, because I could memorize. And I never understood that part of getting good grades probably is having a good memory, but it's because I worked hard at it. And so all of the reason I'm laughing is because I'm going, you just described me.
And probably a lot of people listening.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and the funny part is that it's funny. It's funny that we even come up with this stuff, because what would make me unlovable or you unlovable? There's nothing you like. And this is the part that cracks me up. Like, if, if let's say, right, and this is a visual that I have sometimes, like, let's say, you know, if there is, we'll call it a God, right? Which I do believe in that. And I believe in spirit. I believe in universe. So let's say, for those that believe it or those that don't, whatever, like, would it really be, it's just like a parent isn't going to punish their kids for asking for too much love, right? Like that idea is, even a parent that's really messed up, maybe on drugs, or maybe isn't emotionally available, like, no parent in the world, even the most dysfunctional parent, there's a part of them that wanted to have that child. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given birth to that child. And I know that sounds super trippy, but I really believe that, because there's plenty of people in the world who do want children who don't have them. So the fact that a parent births a kid, there's a part of their soul, there's a part of their psyche, maybe their DNA, that allowed them to birth a child physically. And I really, 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 truly believe that we're all here to love and to be loved. That's like, if you ask me what my religion is, that's what I am. I'm love, right? I'm all about it, because I really believe that we're here for that. I think our whole mission in the world is to remember to be loved no matter what. And I really think there's really only two emotions. There's fear and love. And we're either in fear or we're in love. And I don't mean in love with a partner, right? Even though, of course, there's that too. I mean, in love with the universe, in love with ourselves, in love with the light. And we can't be in love with another person if we don't love ourselves like that. I know that's a cliche and it sounds very hokey, but it's so true. Like, I can't give what I don't have, right? If I have this bottle of water and I see you're thirsty, I can't give you this water if it's not available to me. I have to go get some water and bring it to you. So love is the same way. It's like we can't access love if we don't have it. So this idea that we're not lovable, it comes from some experience or some usually trauma that happened. And this is the work I do, is I help people to connect with their soul, to connect with this is one of the things I do, to connect with that part of them that doesn't feel whole and doesn't feel complete, because I didn't. And I know what that feels like. And there's moments in my day, not every day, but sometimes, where I forget. And I think, oh, you know what? I shame myself, like today, right? With the money thing. Oh, I should have saved more money. And then I think immediately, as soon as I can, and this is where the inner peace stuff comes in, as soon as possible, I ask myself in that moment, do I want to choose love or fear? Because me focusing on not having enough money is fear. It's me shaming myself for being in the past because I should have, could have, would have. And it's fear that I won't have enough. So I have to make a choice, close my eyes, take a breath, and ask myself, do I want to be in love or fear? And then the next thing is, I ask myself, am I making any excuses about this situation? Is there anything in this current situation that I'm making an excuse for? And then I get to ask myself, the third is, what do I want to do with this now? Do I want to continue saying to myself, I'm not lovable? Or do I want to create a new story? Because the truth is that story doesn't serve us. I'm not lovable. Well, of course you're lovable, right? Your parents love you. Your friends love you. Your clients certainly love you. I love you, right? Like, and we just started working together. So it's like amazing how when we actually dissect and take the time to pick apart all of these crazy stories, which they are, they're just stories. You know, like we can recreate the story. We can say that was an experience that happened to me when I was 5 years old, or when I was 10 years old, or, you know, I had a story when I was little that I know, well, there's a couple that I'm thinking of right now, but you know, here's one that if I didn't have something happen by the time I was a certain age, it would never happen. And then it actually happened. And the beautiful thing about that is it didn't come to fruition, but it didn't break me. Like, I thought I would be married by 40. I'm 39. And my wedding dress is hanging in my closet. And I'm okay with it. Like, yeah, I cried, I was sad, blah, blah, blah. But that was a story, right? I didn't need to make it about me. I got really clear that I made the right decision by not moving forward with the wedding. And I don't regret it. I am beyond happy that I didn't do it. And does it mean that I wanted it to go that way? No. But the truth is, I only have control over what I have control over. And I think that's the magic that we all have, is there's going to be so many things. Today, that smoothie blowing up in the car, I think I was mostly bummed because I really wanted to drink it. The mess in my car was like annoying, but I was like, damn it, I really wanted to taste that, you know? And then I ended up like, you know, licking it off my fingers, and I cleaned it up. It was a nuisance, but I took time. I created, like you said, we have to stop and slow down. And I got the message. Like, you know, that was a message. Regina, you got to slow down a little bit. You're moving a little too fast today. So I took my time. I spaced things out. I said when I needed space, like, you know, I asked you for a couple more minutes. My appointment before, you know, I was outside when it happened. And you know, being in integrity, right? Being in integrity with ourselves and saying like how awesome, even this interview today, it's like both you and I were super vulnerable, you know, like you've been sharing parts of yourself that, you know, you might not have ever shared, or maybe recently haven't shared, you know, and that's what I think we're all here to do, is we're all here to shed all the crap out of our systems and out of our lives that don't serve us. And it starts with the simple thing. It starts with going through your closet. If there's a shirt that you don't like, or you put on a pair of pants and you don't like the way it feels, donate it. You know, if there's a picture that every time you look at it, it brings you memories of a bad relationship, get rid of the picture. You know, and it becomes easier to let things go, which is one of the myths too. It's part of the excuses, is letting go of the past and not fearing the future, and remembering that it's perfect. You know, it's a crazy, there's a word I don't want to use, you know, on your show because I want to be polite, but there's a word, you know, SHIT, right? It's like those storms, like that's what's happening right now. It's like, it's everywhere, you know, and the smoothie exploding in my car was like an example of that. It was like, this is how things are at this moment.
The smoothie explosion was a literal visual of, like you described it, of like what would happen if a 2-year-old had thrown up in your car or had an accident or something. So you've given some really super techniques, just as you were explaining about, you know, how to bust those myths. And again, the reason why I had such a reaction is because it was like, you know, it's like, okay, so you named the top myths, and it's like, oh my God, that's me. And I know personally that I represent at least 1,000 people, because in a poll, if you've ever seen the polls they do for TV, they poll 1,000 people to come up with what all the rest of the people are thinking about. So I always figure that if I was part of a poll and somebody asked, that there would be at least 1,000 other people or more probably who would have the same issues. So if somebody wants to reach out to you and work with you, can you talk about some of the ways that you actually work with people?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking. So one of my favorite ways, of course, is yoga, because I'm a certified yoga teacher and meditation teacher. And I found for myself, yoga was a very helpful modality because there's so many layers to yoga, and there's the physical, and then there's the spiritual, and then there's believe it or not, what's called Raja, which is more of a knowledge. It has nothing to do with physical, has nothing to do with, it's more like textbook knowledge. And then of course there's karma, which is karma yoga is like volunteerism, community service, that type of thing. So there's all these different levels, and there's like 1,000 different forms of physical yoga. So yoga is very, intensive, and there's all these different layers. So that's definitely one of the ways. And then I do something called soul language coaching, which is very cool, and I love it, and my students have told me they love it, mostly because it helps them connect with their soul, and it really helps them to align with their life's mission and purpose. And it really helps bring people to clarity, bring people to a knowing about why they're here. And I've seen amazing, amazing results of people, from before working together and then to after. And of course, the other thing I do, I am a speaker and author. And in that, I do work with real estate as well. I help people through wealth. So I help them with their wealth allocation and, with real estate as a vehicle for wealth strategy and success. And then the spirituality kind of comes with all of it. So we do energy work, Reiki, and the meditation. So quite an extensive, I call it, menu of services, and I'm so happy I get to do it. It really fuels me. I love the work I do, and right now I have a couple different things I'm working on. One is a 3-month program, and that's really customized. I am working on building an online, obviously, platform for that, but then there's one-on-ones available too. There's group, and then there's one-on-one.
So people can work with you in a coaching type environment, and then you're also creating some online courses for the future. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm actually right now I'm working on creating online yoga classes, obviously with everything's going on. So I'll be starting next week. We're going to be starting that.
So that's actually a really good point, is online yoga, because that is something you don't have to leave home to do a lot of this work. And I think that's something that many people are learning, that all the things they used to do, all of their socialization and everything, actually it can be done from home. And you can offer that, especially just imagine how everybody's, they can keep doing all of their yoga practices in the online, and then how happy they'll be when they finally can go back out into the world. So this time is really a time of kind of going in, like you said, that internal peace, finding your internal peace within yourself, and understanding that your happiness isn't on the outside of you. It's almost a metaphor for exactly what you're talking about, that internal peace revolution that you were talking about in the beginning. And if somebody wants to reach out, what's the best way to connect with you?
The best way is actually to text me, and that can be to the phone number. It's a 5-digit code, and the code is 64600, and you can text the word yoga. And there's a free gift that I'm offering there on how to actually access internal peace at any moment. So you just go to the free gift tab, and you'll get a download to one of my I think also this is going to be another one, but one of my favorite podcast appearances that I did. And I get pretty vulnerable and raw in that episode as well.
Well, I really like that. So you just text the word yoga, YOGA, in a text message to 64600, go to the free gift tab, and you get your free gift, which is how to access internal peace.
Yep.
It's a pretty good free gift.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's, what I really feel, and this is part of the revolution, is inviting people to join the revolution, the inner peace revolution, because the more inner peace we have individually, the more peace we're going to create in the world. Because if I'm suffering, I can't help anybody. I'm too busy yelling like the guy at the bank. You know, I'm that guy. I'm using him as a metaphor. He was yelling at the lady in front of him, but he was the problem.
Right.
So
it's how we react.
It's how we react. Yeah. So, and I'll be the first to raise my hand and say there's been plenty of times, even recently, where I wasn't behaving very well. And I understand why, because we're human, right? We're going to have outbursts. So I'm not saying you're never going to be upset. I'm not saying you're never going to be angry. But what the beautiful thing about the inner peace revolution is we are creating a stand for people's inner peace, and we're actually creating tools and techniques. And I haven't really voiced it yet, but I will right now, which is we're creating an academy, and we're going to be teaching people how to access internal peace. And I'm working with other leaders in the industry and other speakers and authors. And we're putting together curriculum to teach people these skills, because everybody needs this. And this is something that I really feel collectively, each one of us is responsible for our own happiness. And if I do a good job and I'm happy and you're happy, then we create a ripple effect in the world. And that's really what the world needs, is more peace, more happiness. And it all starts with one person.
So you'll also have a website for that, right? internalpeacenow.com?
I do. Yep.
Okay.
internalpeacenow.com.
internalpeacenow.com. And right now you can easily text yoga, YOGA, to 64600 and just connect there and get that free gift. Because again, if you're listening to this conversation, there's a reason. And the reason is because you're seeking that internal peace now. And I want to thank you, Regena, because, you know, we kind of outlined some of the myths, and of course we revealed that, we have excuses. We have all these reasons about why this and that and the other thing. And the beauty of what our conversation led us to today is that we don't have to live in fear. We can live in love. And I think that you're a really good example of reflecting the light and of bringing that love light into the world. So I want to really thank you for that. Before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you so much, Tammy. It means a lot to hear that. I think the thing that's most important that I would like people to know is that this can be a fun process, and letting go of what's not serving allows us to create more space for love and more light in our life. And as much pain and as much challenge as we think we're going to go through, it's like a tunnel. You can't get to the other side unless you go through it. And that's what fear really is. All it is false evidence appearing real. So whatever that thing is that a person is afraid of or scared of is exactly what they need to do to get to the other side of it. And so that's what I help people with. And I'm so honored that I get to do that work, because I don't take it lightly. And I'm really happy that I get to serve your audience today and your listeners. So thank you for that opportunity, and your watchers, because I know it's video.
Everybody, remember, text yoga to 64600. Go check out Regena's website, internalpeacenow.com. And everyone, and I want everybody to really take this to heart. If you're watching or listening, no matter where you are in this, you really do deserve to be seen and heard. You are the light, and you deserve to be seen and heard. And talk to Regena, because if you listen to her, she's got the tips and tools and methods that can help you to move forward into love. And so with that, this is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
You've been listening to Women Innovators with Tammy Patzer. To learn more, please go to womeninnovatorsradio.com. And please do subscribe and share to spread the big messages and big missions to change the world.